Welcome back to Speed Demon Painting, where today we're making a video on helping new players start in Wild West Exodus. It is a bit of a confusing game to start in, and because you can take so many different things into different factions, lots of new players do not exactly know just how they can make a force in this game. Now, this game is all about picking a faction and then selecting a few bosses to lead their respective posse or their detachment in your force. Your force can be made up of multiple detachments and multiple posses, and if you want to know how that works for a particular faction that piques your interest, I recommend you go to the website from Wild West Exodus and consult the faction handbook, which is a free document that Warcradle provides for every faction. Once you open one of these, in this case the Enlightened as an example, you can see all the different detachments that you're allowed to take in this force. Many of these detachments actually can be taken to multiple armies, but for the sake of brevity I'm limiting myself to the different posses that are available in starter boxes, because I still believe that is the best way for a new player to actually start this game. If you want to just jump into this game, picking up one of those boxes is essentially the best way to do it, so that's how we'll be handling it. I will also mostly be focusing on the different bosses that lead every single posse box, just to give you an idea of what you can expect in your army once you select one of those bosses. The first faction we are looking at today are the Enlightened, the Covenant of the Enlightened. They really are the architects of the dystopian age who have invented most of the super weapons that are being used in it, and it really is the faction of body horror in the Wild West. They use these giant flesh constructs that are a bit reminiscent of the old Frankenstein memes, and then you can field insanely strong, huge bulking monstrosities, but you can also just use smaller swarms of constructs that have had arms replaced with weapons just to swarm your enemy and to beat him into submission. If you like an undead-like playstyle where you resurrect troops through your leaders, then this is a faction for you. The next faction we are taking a look at is one of the superpowers of the world, namely America, in the form of the Union. The Union is a very militaristic force in Wild West Exodus that relies on using a lot of troops to overpower the enemy and to shoot them into oblivion. This can take many forms. One of such is the Automata army, led by Nikolai Tesla, where he is using his superior Tesla bots to beat the enemy into submission. But you can also take the more traditional military aspect and just field lots of regular human troops. You can do other things than just use troops as well. You can also use Abraham Lincoln and his Secret Service. That whole getting assassinated thing was really just a hoax and a cover-up to sort of make sure that he can go incognito into the western frontier and keep America safe in a more frontline duty role. If you're wondering, how on earth did we end up in the Victorian age with these sort of crazy weapons and this crazy science going on, well, this next race is to blame essentially. It's the first alien race we're encountering in this video, and it's the Watchers. It's in fact not one race, but it is a conglomerate of many different races found across the galaxy that sort of keep an eye out for any existential threats that the galaxy might face. If you find a sentient race that they deem an existential threat, they will essentially wipe them and start over again. Now, these guys are the ones that discovered humanity, and unfortunately one of their spaceships crash landed in the Antarctics and was discovered by the scientists from the Enlightened, which is exactly the reason why the scientific progress has been as insane as it was. And yeah, if you like the look of these sort of Roswell-like aliens who are incredibly specialized at what they do, then you want to take a look at the Watchers to get you started in Wild West Exodus. The Watchers are not the only alien race that is present on the dystopian age. One of them is the Hex, and it's an alien creature that is being hunted down across the galaxy, and is sort of underrun and trying to form a symbiosis, if you will, with many different creatures that it finds. And that sort of power bond that it forms with those creatures results in many, many weird, almost wizard-like abilities in those creatures, ranging from the first box you just saw to these voodoo-esque creatures that you can find in states like Louisiana and everything. These Hex just go around corrupting everything as they go, and they're not just corrupting humans. They can corrupt wildlife, they can corrupt anything they come across. So if you like the look of lots of mutations and these things, the Hex definitely is an army that you could be interested in. And yeah, not just beast, but it's corrupting entire nations of indigenous people found in America, like in this Dark Nation box. Any planet that the Hex can be found on will also have a presence of the Order on it. It is the race that is essentially trying to hunt down the Hex and stop its corrupting power, and it essentially wages a crusade on that planet. And humanity has got a pretty bad case of Hex taints, so these guys are ramping it up completely by sending in some of their most elite cohorts to eliminate this corruption. If you like a force of highly elite soldiers and this sort of Holy Crusade theme, you definitely want to look into the Order. There are two main factions, the Spica cohorts made up of humans and the Corcoroli elite, who are being sent in to eliminate this corruption. The Holy Order of the Allshard is not the only faction that absolutely despises what is going on with planet Earth. The indigenous people of America, called the Warrior Nation, definitely want to see all of the corruption of their land gone from this place. And they do so by tapping into the power of the Earth Spirit. And if you like the look of these Native Americans transforming into wolf-like creatures and this more spiritual, shamanistic nature of this force, then you definitely want to look into this force. It's not just wolf-like creatures, they can change into the aspect of the eagle, of the falcon. They have a lot of naturalistic elements going on, so if you love this look, definitely look into the Warrior Nation boxes. It's not just the Warrior Nation that tries to keep the land safe, that duty also falls to the lawmen of the West. And it is a force that tries to stick up for the little guy in the West, for the pioneers. They try to do this both by clearing out the corruption, like the Infernal Investigations posse does, but they also just have the traditional lawmen, sheriffs and marshals, just trying to lock up any roaming gangs of outlaws, making life unsafe in the West. The last faction we are looking into is the most colourful one of all of them. It's the Outlaws, and it's actually 4 sub-factions joined together into one giant banner. They can go from these weird anachronisms of Spanish conquistadores running around trying to get taint out of the land. You can also have Mexican crime lords making their own golden army, crossing the border to try to claim some of the land as their own. And you have the remnants of the Confederate Rebellion, who are defeated in the Ore War, but who are still banding together and trying to stick it to the Union whenever they can. And apart from these 3 sub-factions, you have the main ones being mercenaries, and they include incredibly famous and infamous gunslinger posses from back in the day, like Johnny Ringo, for instance, Billy the Kid and his Regulators. You have things like Earl Shepherd running around, used to be a lawman, now actually is a bit of an outlaw, going around. Marcus Wayward and the Wayward Aid, the Deadly Seven. There's the Only God Forgives posse, which is a madam from a brothel leading her patrons into battle. It's an incredibly rich background, and if you like the idea of just having a bit of a ragtag bunch of misfits making the West unsafe and claiming riches for their own, then the Outlaws, that's the fact. And there you have it. That was a brief overview of all the factions you can use in Wild West Exodus. You can pick up any of the starter sets from this that were sort of shown in the background while this was going, and if you combine it with one of the rulebook sets along with the gubbins, then you are essentially good to go to start your adventure on the frontier. Hope this was useful to you. If it was, give it a thumbs up, and if you want to see more content like this, please subscribe to the channel. Bye!